Hi everyone, welcome to AppScript Crash Course. Today we're going to learn all about data validation in AppScript. Now, data validation, as a lot of you know, is our top requested feature, or has been for a while. We recently implemented this in August, and there's a blog post announcing the functionality on our blog, googleappdeveloper.blogspot.com. You'll want to check that out. What we'll do in this crash course is run through the basics of what data validation is and how I can do it programmatically, just to get you up and running. Okay, so what I have here, if we can switch to the example here. So we have just a new spreadsheet. All I did was rename it. What is data validation? So data validation is the act of putting rules to a cell so that you can restrict the contents of it. So in a regular spreadsheet, you can type whatever you want in any of the cells and it accepts the input. But let's say I want to restrict what's in B1 here. I can go to data validation in the UI, and we can specify a criteria for this range here. So we can say that we want to have a list of items. Let's just do cat, hat, and bat as the allowed items. And on invalid data, we'll show a warning. We're not going to reject input because we don't want to be that mean. And let's just go ahead and save that validation. Now what you'll see here is these regular cells are just blank, but this validation cell has this drop down that shows you the different allowed inputs for that. So you can either go press in and select these, or if it's just a blank cell, you can type in something and it's selected as well. Now just to prove that it works, let me just type in some random nonsense here, and then you'll see that there's a red mark here saying that the cell contents are invalid. All right, now let me reset all of this here and we'll run through a more useful example. Let's see. Now, in order to get rid of data validation rules in the UI, you have to go back to data validation and remove validation. Okay, so now we're back. This is just a normal spreadsheet. And what we're going to do is programmatically create the same thing in a slightly more useful example. So let's say you're inviting some people to come to your house for a party, and you want an easy way to find out what someone's response is. Now, this is in a world where Google Calendar doesn't exist and there's no other mechanisms in order to do this more efficiently. So we're going to use a basic spreadsheet for this. So now we'll just set up quickly two columns here. One will be name and one will be response. Let me just bold that. Okay, now we can have our invite list here. Let's invite Bob, let's invite Tim, let's invite Jane, and then Joe also. Okay, now what we want is, we don't want to send this list to them and then they can say like, for sure, or anything. Like we want to restrict it so that maybe we can send emails automatically and take actions programmatically based on what they wrote. So what we want to do is ideally provide them choices saying yes, no, or maybe in this response column. In order to do that, we can use AppScript, go to Tools, Script Editor to pull that up. We need to get a reference to this range, and then we need to create a validation object, and then we join those two together in order to apply it on the spreadsheet. I'll show you how that works. So let's get that range first, not range, equals. Now spreadsheet.getActive gets you the active spreadsheet, and then you can further say get range and give it the A1 notation of B2 to B. Now, some of you are familiar with this, but I'll just explain for everyone else. Now, when I just say B here, it means that start in B2 and then go all the way down in that column and apply to every single cell there. So now that I have the range, let's create the validation object. Now, the data validation, the object itself lives within the spreadsheet app service. So we'll start by going into spreadsheet app and then new data validation. As you can see, this returns a data validation builder object, and a builder object, it's a common paradigm that we use in other places in AppScript as well. What it allows you to do is apply operations over and over to this object when you're constructing it. So you're the builder and you're making it. And so one thing we want to do with data validation is we want to give it the type of data validation, and we want to give it the validation list. or the validation source. In this example, the type of data validation would be we want to provide it a list of immediate values, and we wanted to tell the user if it's valid or not. So let's go select the type first. Now we can say a dot and then use autocomplete to see all the validation rules, and we'll say require value in list. And we'll select this overloaded method with two parameters that I'll explain in a second. The first one is an array, and you can provide in the acceptable values. Here, they will be yes, no, if I can type, and maybe. Now, what we want in the second column is we control if we're going to show the drop down as that these are valid assertions or not. So now let's just make that true. So now what do we do here? This method shows that we want a list-based validation. We provided it the list, and we set the drop down to true. Now, what we need to do is finally build the validation object. And we do that by doing build. Now that we have the range and that we have the validation, we can club them together. Now, in the range object, you'll find a method called setDataValidation. Now, you can provide it the validation that we just created, save, and run. You'll notice that it's going to ask for authorization. This is because you need to access the spreadsheet in order to make changes to the validation rules. So now let's just go ahead and continue and accept the authorization in the nice new authorization panel. Now, when you go back to the spreadsheet, these cells were blank before, and now they have this little drop down in them with the list of yes, no, and maybe. So when you share the spreadsheet out through the power of Google Docs collaboration, your invitees can say, no, Bob's not going to go, or Tim's going to say, yes, I'll go, or Jane can type in maybe, and we'll wait for Joe to actually fill out this form. So this is the way that Joe can later go in and say cat here and screw up your data analysis portion, because cat is not valid, and it'll have this red mark next to it. So it's a very simple example of how to do data validation. If you take a look at our blog post announcing this feature, we have more complicated example that shows you just how powerful it is to programmatically be able to change all these validation rules. And let me quickly show you the power in an example here. So now I have a copy of a spreadsheet from that blog post, and this spreadsheet applies a validation rule to all of the cells. And right now, these cells in this row are flagged as invalid. And that's because these dates are in 2014. What these validation rules are saying that the validation rules are enforcing that the dates are in 2013. So now with the data validation object and the various methods within, you can parse this entire document, get all of the old validation rules, update them all so that instead of 2013, they're looking for 2014, and then apply them again to the spreadsheet, all in a very short number of steps. Now, let's see. I can go to this menu and say, change the 2013 validations to 2014. And there you go. Instantly, all of the 2014 dates are now valid and the 2013 dates are invalid. Now, if you want to find out how to do this, there's some great sample code attached to this document. And once again, you can find this by going to our blog post on the Apps Developer blog. We'll put up a link for that so you can get into that. I want to thank you for joining me on this. I hope you found it informative, and I can't wait to see what you guys come up with. Thanks. My name is Kalyan Reddy. Goodbye.